You are watching the Commanders Report by Chat Sports, presented by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. On today's show, we got a loaded program for you guys. First up, some more Commanders injury updates coming today from Ashburn. Then Washington made multiple roster moves that we're going to be breaking down after that. Then we'll get into two new trade targets for the Washington Commanders if they want to make a last-minute trade before the start of the 2026 NFL season. And then we'll have some practice notes here from Tuesday's practice to finish up your day. But first, let's get into the latest injury updates. We did have a foursome here of players that did not play and did not practice in Ashburn today at Commanders training camp. We had Odafe, Oweh, and Chaisson, the edge rushers, Jer'Zhan Newton, the defensive tackle, and Jordan Magee, the linebacker. Now, there are reports out there that Newton and Magee in particular are dealing with minor injuries. We'll have to get updates from those guys as the days go on here, but it's possible Oweh just got a veteran days off. We'll have to see what the status looks like for these four players as we continue on in the week. And there's a couple of Commanders players that are off to the IR, and their seasons are over now, and that is wide receiver Cracraft and the running back Jerome Ford. Both these guys' seasons are officially over after heading to the injured reserve. And another roster move here, the Washington Commanders have also released punter Matt Hack. We did see Hack punt for this team in the preseason opener last week against the Miami Dolphins. He is no longer a part of this team, opening yet another roster spot. And to fill those three spots, the Commanders have signed three new players: Krys Barnes, the veteran linebacker; Maurice Hurst, the former Michigan defensive tackle; and Tre McKitty, the tight end. So listen, man, honestly, I don't see any of these guys really sticking. Maybe Krys Barnes does. He's got the most experience. He's been kind of like a practice squad, depth linebacker for a while. But honestly, I like the linebackers in this room already, so I don't really see him sticking here in Washington for the long haul. I just think that the Commanders essentially brought in some camp bodies here to fill out their 90-man roster. Now, coming up here on the Commanders Report, two new Commanders trade targets that they could go out and pursue if they want to make a last-minute trade before the start of the 2026 NFL season. But before we get to the rest of today's show, I want to tell you about our presenting sponsor here on the Commanders Report, which is Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. And you guys should definitely be taking advantage of a weekly promotion that they do on their app called Taco Tuesday. On Taco Tuesdays, throughout the day, Prize Picks releases multiple discounted player projections called tacos, and they're marked with a taco icon on the app. Just put them in your normal daily fantasy lineups on Prize Picks and watch your sports for that night to see if your lineup wins. Then you guys can take a look here at my Taco Tuesday lineup here, where I'm taking the more on Trey Turner, the more on Mitchell here, and then I'm taking the more on Wilson Contreras. This particular lineup is a really good lineup here. For a $10 entry fee, you guys could walk away with $145 in winning. So kind of low risk, kind of higher reward here. Really good stuff there. Best of all, Prize Picks just switched their offer. All you have to do is play your first $5 lineup with code HMA, and if you win that lineup, you get $150 in additional lineups. Because of this new offer, there's not a better time to join than right now, right before the start of football season. So lock in and win that first lineup today. One more time, that's code HMA at sign up to get $150 in bonus lineups if you win your first $5 lineup. So get in on the Taco Tuesday action right now by clicking the link in the comments and description to download the app today. As always, play responsibly, and a big thank you to Prize Picks for sponsoring us here at the Commanders Report. All right, so the first new trade target for the Washington Commanders is Broderick Jones, the offensive tackle currently presiding with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jones is a former first-round pick, in fact, a former top 15 pick out of the University of Georgia as a left tackle. He's still only 25 years old, so still very young, 6'5", 311 pounds, came out as kind of one of these super athlete type of offensive tackles, very fluid mover, but he is coming off a major neck injury last year that ended his season and frankly took away a lot of his offseason this year where he lost a lot of weight. And right now, the Pittsburgh Steelers certainly have a long-term plan at offensive tackle that definitely does not include Broderick Jones, because Jones is entering the final year of his current contract. They declined his fifth-year option, and then you have two very recent first-round picks at this position for them, in Troy Fautano out of Washington and Maxi Honiger this past year out of Arizona State. And then Dylan Cook is a very good swing tackle option for them as well. So it seems like the Steelers could afford to let go of Broderick Jones and get something for him before he ends up hitting the open market next year. But the thing with Broderick, guys, is that he's lost a lot of weight in the offseason. Now, he's technically a full go, and he's been a full participant in practices. He even played in the preseason game last week for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but he's lost a lot of weight, and he's still trying to get back to that main playing weight that he was at to start his career, that 311-pound marker. He's significantly less than that at this point, and it's not clear if he's actually going to reach that weight marker by the time we get to the start of the season. The reason why he lost all that weight, by the way, guys, is because he was dealing with that neck injury, and while you're recovering from that, you're not allowed to lift, okay? Because it's spinal stuff. You're not allowed to lift or do anything like that. So he lost a lot of weight. He's still trying to get that weight back on. So personally, I would rather just stick with Brandon Coleman, kind of like Broderick. Coleman is a very physically talented offensive tackle prospect, and let's be real. Broderick Jones, in his time in Pittsburgh to this point, he's got a lot of experience playing both left and right tackle, but he hasn't played particularly well. In fact, his backup, Dylan Cook, outperformed him in Pittsburgh after replacing him once he went down with that injury. So at this point, Coleman is more familiar with this team. This team is more familiar with Coleman. I'm not throwing any sort of draft capital at Pittsburgh to bring in Broderick Jones at this point. But then a name that's really interesting to me here, guys, is Walker Little, who we have talked about on this show before, but we haven't talked about him for a little while here. Now that Laramie Tunsil is likely out for the rest of this season with that torn triceps injury, I think it's nice to bring his name back up here because he's still in his 20s, 27 years old, big dude, 6'7", 325 pounds. So very big guy. Second round pick out of, I believe it was Stanford back in 2021. Of course, he's spent his entire NFL career with the Jacksonville Jaguars to this point. He's got 39 career starts at left tackle. So you guys can see here throughout his career, hasn't been like the highest graded offensive tackle in the world or anything like that. He's been mostly in the low 60s in terms of his grade, which is why Jacksonville is likely looking to move off of him at some point here and maybe try to get something for him in a trade. Now, in terms of what a trade could look like, I could see something, late day 3 pick, something like a 6th round pick is probably what we're looking at here. Maybe even some sort of 7th round pick is probably the best case scenario in this particular situation, but Little has played in this league. He's still got a little bit of upside left. He's obviously got some nice physical traits. So if the Commanders really want to bring in somebody that's got starting experience, all that different stuff at this position to replace Laramie Tunsil, this is maybe their best option, possibly with the exception of Taylor Decker, who is still available in free agency. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Would you accept this trade, a 6th-round pick next year to bring in Walker Little to be this team's left tackle here in 2026? Give me an A for accept or D for decline. For me personally, guys, I'd probably give it a D for decline, but if they did it, I wouldn't be too upset, all right? Because this team, Dan Quinn, the coaching staff, the offensive line coach here, they know what's best for this offensive line and for this group, guys. So if they don't think Brandon Coleman is going to be a sustainable option for them at left tackle and they want to throw a late day 3 pick on Little to help this team be as successful as it can possibly be this year, I'm not going to really have an issue with that. But I just personally think there's not enough upside here, and I'd rather keep my draft picks and have those dart throws next spring here in D.C. Now, before I go and finish up today's show, guys, some practice notes from Tuesday. Now, keep in mind, Tuesday was a lighter practice, despite Dan Quinn saying today was going to be a fully padded practice. There was no pads out there today. Guess there's been some bumps and bruises along the way here that the Commanders want to, account for, and it's also possible that that this could be a signal that we could see the starters play a little bit for the Commanders in this next week's preseason game. But according to Josh Taylor, who was on the ground in practice today, says 1-minute drill, and Jaden Daniels was surgical. Found Diggs for a big gain on the right sideline, then hit Chigakonkwo for a 40-yard touchdown on a seam route. Perfect drive, and that's exactly what you want to hear. Apparently, Jaden has really, really been good over these last 2 weeks at Commanders training camp, and for him to look and feel comfortable inside this offense is exactly what you're hoping for as a Commanders fan heading into this season, because he's a big-time talent, and if this team is going to do the things that they want to do this year, Jaden Daniels is going to have to be like an MVP candidate at quarterback this year. And then speaking of the quarterback position, Ethan Kaliakmanis was getting the QB2 reps behind Jaden Daniels today. Now, according to people on the ground, around, Daniels was taking a large majority of the snaps, even with like some of the second team units and such, to replace Marcus Mariota's, spot kind of in the quarterback room and in the rotation here. But Calic Manis was ahead of Sam Hartman in the rotation. So look for Calic Manis to probably get the first crack at things when it comes to the backup quarterbacks this Saturday in the second preseason game for Washington. And then another highlight that happened today was that Percy Butler, backup safety, has been kind of a mainstay in terms of being a depth safety here in Washington over the last several years, had an insane one-handed interception today. You guys can see that still frame there. He caught that football, man, jumping up in the air, grabbing that thing with one hand. Really, really cool stuff from Percy Butler during practice today. Now, that'll be it for today's edition of the Commanders Report by Chat Sports. If you guys didn't know, we do have a Facebook page where you guys can follow us. We put our shorts on there. We do daily posts on there as well. Lots of fun stuff up there on that Facebook page. So if you want to help support us on that social media platform, you guys can find us at Chat Sports WFT. Greatly appreciate your guys' support. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And until then, hail to the Commanders.